Everything funny out of your money now, Caribbean. For once, any and all the latest updates in our chess and could be like an shame on your swing in your being to keep you updated. Yes, already in feeling tune, me and Candy Warrior the ancient one. Kwesi Pratt and it's my Bible thing, it's a bit disciplined a NPP minority led by Afenyo and Crawford. Didn't ya a year after forcing call a year parliament Ecoca Ghana edit to my name power Chelsea almost sure. She see a capa in Yama NPP for a year good the energy sector on Omoka some more Tomo Watsapp I had doomed to be a becoming a young secretary almost the cap bobosia bassa ye want the paper be somebody into more pagana for Chelsea almost sure. Ye the one city a year tax and I said levy able to a year every liter of petrol better every Ghana Afenyo. NPP for Mumo I created this mess and also a month year. And on that Kwesi Pratt about Bonti say. So if say NPP minorities for say or more oyan kwa or more drink Ghana hopa or more share the alternative via papa because they are saying say the ones Ghana cities 11 and yet alternative papa and a pong can also okay. Some more to me I identify that one city a Levy now a President John Dramani Muhammad Deban and yet Emma more coming out to Ghana food drama. Monche the other alternative for a mama. No minority or more a parliament or more irresponsible to say NPP for more horses as you speak. Then you agree pa young quotes see a punish and discipline the NPP.
The national debt was introduced. The objective of that was to raise resources in order to free the energy sector from its heavy indebtedness. And things were happening well until the new patriotic party government led by Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo came into office. And they decided that retiring the power sector debt was not the priority. That their priority was to develop the capacity for borrowing more. For what? So they used the monies which had accumulated from the imposition of the energy sector levy as collateral for getting loans, more loans. Just, and everybody knows what loans have done to the national economy, you understand? So they created a problem, okay? They created a huge problem. Now today, the debt keeps ballooning. At the same time, consumers of electricity are saying that the cost of electricity is too high. Industry is saying so, even domestic consumers are saying so, and so on. So it would appear to me that increasing tariffs, electricity tariffs, may not be a preferred solution given what the public sentiment is. Now, if increasing electricity tariffs cannot be the solution, then what can be the solution? This is where we are. The Mahama government thinks that they can impose a levy of one city. Now we have been told that it's one city, okay? And that can generate resources to enable them to retire the debt and keep electricity prices reasonable for industry, for domestic consumers, and for everybody. You understand? That is what they have decided to do. The minority in parliament quickly says that no, that this is bad. This is not the promise that the Mahama administration made and so on. Okay, we agree. No problem, we agree. What is the alternative? What have they said is the workable alternative? If the imposition of the levies is bad, what is good? They should tell us. As I sit here, I haven't heard any alternative from the minority. None whatsoever. And it's important also to understand that it is this same minority that sat in parliament and agreed that the monies which had accumulated or were accumulating in order to deal with this problem should be used as a collateral in getting loans. What an irresponsible minority. I mean, they are so irresponsible, it's unbelievable. So irresponsible. Because if you think that these measures are bad, it is not good for the economy, it is going to hurt people and so on, where is your alternative? How should we raise the necessary funds to retire the energy sector debt? Look, let us admit, the imposition of this levy comes with many difficulties. One of the difficulties is that we have put a lot of pressure on commercial transport operators to reduce their fares on the assumption that petroleum pricing had dropped to a certain level. Okay? What is the impact of this imposition of an extra 1 cedi levy on petroleum products? Are we going to ask commercial drivers now to review their fares? And if we are not going to ask commercial drivers now to review their fares, what are we going to do? And you see, President John Dramani Mahama said something, I think I even found it this morning in one of the newspapers, that he expects the cedi to eventually stabilize at between 10 and 12 cedis to $1. What does that tell us? What that tells us is that the president knows that the drop in the value of the cedi would not be constant. And then at a certain point, it will start rising again. That's clear. But beyond what the president says is the Bank of Ghana. The Bank of Ghana has told us that by the close of the year, the value of the cedi will be around 11 cedis to $1. That's the Bank of Ghana, which is another indication that the cedi will rise again. Other agencies are actually predicting that we are going to end the year with the cedi to dollar ratio at 14 to 1, which is another indication that it's going to rise again. Okay. Now, if you look at the bill which was sent to Parliament, there is no sunset clause. No sunset clause. Which means that even if all these predictions are wrong, and the cedi rises all the way beyond 14 and so on, there will still be this imposition of a 1 cedi levy. What does that mean for the consumer and so on? Now, Senna, you would remember because you hosted that program here. I was making the point that I am in opposition to this market economy that we are trying to run. It doesn't make sense. Ultimately, it leads to hardship for the people. It leads to taking control away from central government to other peripheral institutions and so on. But you see, if you say you are running a market economy, what it means is that the laws of demand and supply and so on determine prices. Prices are not decided on the basis of control, central control and so on. So yes, everybody in Ghana can see that the cedi is appreciating in value. Everybody can see that. Everybody can see the good things that are happening in the economy and so on. If you're running the kind of economy that you want to run and so on, leave things to take their natural course. You understand? But some of our friends in government, they have their own ideas. They want to quickly jump in and take credit for everything, and forget that what they are taking credit for can change because of the operation of market forces and so on. Now, that is bad in communications. You don't take credit for something which is beyond your capacity and so on. And they haven't learned that, and they have continued. These oil marketing companies have issued a statement, very interesting statement. What are the oil marketing companies saying? They're saying that, look, the price of petroleum products can rise again. Given the understanding of the operation of the economy, the price of petroleum products can rise again. Okay? How is that factored into government policy? So that 6 months from now, people don't turn around and accuse government of lying or betraying them. How honest can we be with the Ghanaian public and stop this useless spinning all the time, spinning? We should stop spinning and face the reality. The spinning is too much. And the spinning ultimately will be very, very harmful to government. Let's deal with reality. Now, so many suggestions are being made about how to deal with our power problems and so on. Listen to many. There is an emphasis on green energy. There's an emphasis on all kinds of innovative, There are all kinds of innovative ideas about how to generate power at lower cost and so on. And you see, when you're on a panel with somebody like Dr. Kwabena Donko, you have to be careful because he sees with all the figures and so on. You understand? But you see, from where I sit, it is clear that so far now, if you take our energy mix, the cheapest is actually hydro. Because the last time I checked, hydropower, the unit cost is around 3 cents per whatever measure they use, 3 cents. Now, if you come to thermal generation, it's interesting. It can drop all the way above 20 cents, from 3 cents to beyond 20 cents per the same unit. Okay? So hydro is important. Now, I looked at Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's 7-year development plan. And Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's 7-year development plan spoke about mini hydro projects dotted around the country for purposes of irrigation, for agricultural development, and for power generation, and so on. Now, the mini hydro projects have been abandoned. Nobody is talking any longer about the mini hydro projects. 2 weeks ago, I drove to Sandama. And on the way, I saw the consequences of opening the Bagri Dam, what it does to people. I mean, if you drive along that route, it's obvious. The villages would get submerged underwater and so on. And I know that there has been an idea to build a new hydroelectric project somewhere there. Pardon? Palugu, fantastic. To build a new hydro project there, which will stop the flooding, the devastation, the destruction of agriculture and so on, and give us water for irrigation to improve agriculture and also give us power. What are we doing about that? What are we doing about that? You understand? There have been all kinds of theories about wave energy, and the champion of that was Kenneth Jackson. Kenneth Jackson came up with this theory about how we can even generate power just by utilizing the waves of the sea and so on. What happened to that? So, look, it's important for us to look at all of these alternatives, some of which are cheaper than thermal generation, to improve our energy mix to bring down the prices and also to help us to deal with this situation where we keep piling debt upon debt in the energy sector. But you see, above all of this, and this is a point which was made by a lawyer and by Dr. Kwabneji very strongly. I think we also made the same point. But we know why this debt is ballooning. Because the cost of that sector is also the result of gross inefficiency and mismanagement. Okay? So you don't tax us to pay for the debt without taking measures to stop the accumulation of the useless debt. So as they say in French, it ought to be parapasso. Is that how they say it? Parapasso. So you may be introducing the tax, but at the same time, we ought to see measures which would cut the waste. And we ought to hold managers accountable for their irresponsible actions which lead to ballooning the debt and so on. So there are many people who would have had no problem with the imposition of this tax or this levy. But are saying that, look, we will pay forever. We are told, for example, about line losses. What is the major cost of line losses? Obsolete equipment. Obsolete equipment. For as long as we continue to operate with obsolete equipment and so on, line losses will continue to increase. You understand? Now, recently, I was hearing of the proposal to privatize certain aspects of ECG's operations and so on. I was saying, what the hell is wrong with us? We did that before with disastrous consequences. We brought in the Electricity Company of France. We privatized the collection of revenue, gave it to the Electricity Company of France, and it was a complete disaster. Why? We brought in Rand of South Africa, privatized aspects of the operations of the Ghana Water Company. It was a total disaster. So our leaders, are they not learning? And indeed, what makes them think that private companies have some magic which the state sector cannot have? What is it? Is it that those who manage the private companies went to a different school? They go to the same school as public sector managers. They learn the same things. Why can't they all apply the same things they all learn from the same school? And in any case, if it comes to the capacity to generate resources, the state and the private sector, who has more capacity to generate resources? So this privatization thing is something that doesn't make sense and should be dropped as quickly as possible. Luckily, the Public Utility Workers Union and all the 22 national unions of the Trades Union Congress are opposed to privatization, and they have come up with concrete plans for keeping power generation in the state sector, which will make power generation work. I implore government to listen to the labor unions, to the workers who work the plants, to the workers who work the distribution system and so on. Perhaps if they did that, it may be useful.
Thank you. Everything for Kwesi Pratt and any breaks and a church and come apart, or the economy is a room, or the science a room, or the PPA room, or the politics a room, and our can't the reality issues and the reality a solution. Society, am I saying go be a criticizer, papa because of criticizing the government, criticizing the way forward, and the solutions on bit my day. I take it in place and by my air the economy team bounce it back. And to say a year in Crophobia anymore. You people have been in government for the past 8 years. I'm a one casa cramp for because the new government here will be over brepa because young Casanini. Scandals at APP said the president of Ford Casancasanim took can say the mess and Casanca say or a young mess get to or no deal or train the next government amana be solve it because or no doing to mean solve it. Sometimes now I got a year and some months and a day anymore. So the president concluded say or no on to mean solve that problems now one as so say or train the next government amana be solve it. You know it is no. That means the NPP for ankasa GHZI1 say omo create mess bi omo ntimi solve. The next government aba and what na boase din a steady the way our problem in city. Emma the president ankasa ko parliament ko kan say ono kwan bia so said there may be a trim no cars about fixing himself or fixing him. Or no John Dramani Mahama as the president he's going to solve every mess economic mess be mess bia amagane honchira me komu buno ono president John Dramani Mahama the best service mess na amagane ho atwe kakra ampa oba abemu no wa show bibisi ampa obitima ye awogusu ye de said the Sydney awarding is den and I say etima against the dollar said the petrol was tiny boss amanaba from why never be a man for gusuba on some the emano even though NPP for Akroma is sure because they thought say never people win any secret because bondholders for quoting but what me to music come and doing so was any expected doing so about so as a name be any muji in a cracker. Then all ya is so special ain't my a Koda sorry I am a Hamas or share Ghana for Pomacho. Almost said the hash barber Thomas with the last really a very important or some more channel one city every any related beyond every petrol shells beyond no the best of some energy crisis because the crisis there no or catch them out only to me teaching my montiasi said young Kofu we is ya mismanage the energy sector no and ya sink it to a time a bomb. And these are the same people every day, anytime, Biano, almost saying ya no cassa, HM say or and I just say more bit my knee na Ghana for a mistake. Or say Ghana for us, I think it beam. If you say, beating us at the power na some mobile. These same people and I send the economy or more so na say a critic a year. You can say nonsense, noise, lot of noise in the air system. So, Kwesi Pratt actually say, you people now the beer more soya, more cassa, more soy near the 90-80, small by 90, depend the beno. Must say, the 1 city energy level now ye de banner, and yet. So, more alternative ye if you say, yeah, more alternative ye because mo kasa na mo titi mo parliament mo ye press conference mo ko TV radio station kasa no mo nka mo alternative and then mo ye the worst and the irresponsible minority ever pay Kwesi Pratt wo hu because mo kasa no na mo criticism who is enthused yanse bie ni mo making noise keke mo magana for asun ko edie you say the politics. And then about boy in idea politics. The government might has chosen say Kobema the electricity tariffs are the acostro and I say better to light beam yen can san in entiasi. Kobita Basi is better to light beam because of the energy crisis. Kobetumu saying and I came paying because under the previous government every 3 months we are near to a light beam. Faso beni nyai nti kebetum siam nyina ho atayi mo na to electricity bill na my din because mo see we are under IMF new how you people say young quietness nti no Ghana for nyina no entimas because we are under IMF ni free my to light bill mo bill nyina ya ntro the only thing around for culture the president and say for now mama all these messes and buy no go after those people, retrieve our money back, and use those monies to fix the energy sectors. Because Moka said 3.1 billion debt, debt na mobile amount in Ghana. But that's a need a mass debt in a buy. So what are you doing about those people more critical debt? No more your modern. More determine from yes, sir. Moko manko to nkrofo yes aho mapama omo machibiatum or prosecute bimo the answer you find out your containers been room ya kofa and ya carry just to disgrace people. They be take actions. They're talking a bit too much. And yes, idea you will people collect the levy and the tax meanwhile. And Myanmar and Ma debt and everybody so now money to me and enter those things. Then you'll be paying debt and you'll be paying taxes. I just impossible behind the inisu. Because Pratt with my child in the comment section. Subscribe and share my news in your meeting. For once.